How we doing, class? Let's see if we can get some Chapter 7 stuff in here this morning. We are staying with the salesperson performance. This time we were talking specifically to motivating the salesperson performance. A couple things I want to highlight before I hit your questions. Stuff that might have not come up in the questions themselves. We have motivation. Motivation is built upon expectancy theory. Basically, you will be motivated if you expect something in the near future. You will be motivated if amount of effort on that tasks match the reward. That's the expectancy. That's what you would expect. Again, we have one of these crazy boxes with lines all over the place. Hold on one second. Sorry about that. We're back. So the major components, we just talked about extra expectancies, instrumentalities, the perceived relationship between performance and increased rewards. This is the one that didn't come up in any of our questions that I needed to talk about. Valence for rewards. You know, most of the time we think about valence, we think about blinds or something like that. But really, instead of the word valence, you should use the word weight. How much we weight or perceive as good one reward versus another. And there was a number of questions about that without using the word valences. Let me see if I could skip ahead a little bit here. Instrumentalities. You know, a valence is your perception of desirability of receiving an increased reward through improved performance. You know, and we're going to see this in some of the questions, and I'll get to it. At certain stages in your career, you might have a higher weight for one reward versus another. I'm going to get to that. Anything else here? I think we're pretty much good. We are going to get to a couple questions on the career stages of motivation. So I'm going to leave this here. I'm going to jump over to the questions. Here we go. So let's get going. In your experience, in which industries or sales function are the newest people often the worst performers? I'm going to be perfectly direct, and I don't have a response for this question. I really don't. Now, we can certainly say in technical, or complex sales positions, new people don't start there. Like if you think at our Valley case where they were hiring college graduates right out of the chute, doing little to no training, and then putting them in a sales position. Okay, but you're not going to hire a college grad straight out of the chute with little to no training and then go work for Boeing or Lockheed Martin and sell military contracts to the U.S. government. No. I apologize, I don't have anything more specific here. But there's just too many variables to go through. How do you motivate sales reps when money is not effective? Is money the most important factor that affects motivation? No. Money is not the most important factor. It is an important factor. I think for some reps, and this is dependent upon the reps, it could be the most important factor. We're going to get to more questions with regards to career stages, and we're going to talk more about this specifically. But, appreciation would work. Having a little flexibility would work. Let's hold off on that. We're going to get to more questions because more than one person asked this. Do you think motivation factors different for Generation Y compared to X compared to baby boomers? Yes, absolutely. In general, the younger you are, the more money is a great carrot. which sounds kind of interesting because when you're younger, you don't think you need a whole lot of money. You may not have as many expenses. You may not be married. You may not have a mortgage. You may or may not have a big-time car loan. You may not be preparing for your kids to go to college. But in certain stages, money tends to work. Perhaps it's the first time when you start working that you finally get money. You finally have a real paycheck. And you could finally have some monopoly money to throw around. And you kind of like that. And it works for a little while. But it wears off. And there's a lot of people in this classroom that know exactly what I'm talking about. That you're 3, 4, 5 years into your career and you're like, yeah, no. Money's good, but it's not the only thing. A feeling of self-worth, a feeling of belonging, feeling of really being somewhere where your career can advance for the next 10 or 15 years. That's a situation where, depending on how long you've been working, baby boomers want security more than anything else. They'll gladly trade off income to make sure that they're going to be in a position for the next 4 or 5 years. They're more worried about other things other than money. The baby boomers need their retirement and healthcare plans more than anything else. To the point where when we had the financial meltdown, that lots of X's and lots of baby boomers were taking all the Y jobs at probably half the rate that they were getting paid before, just because they needed the health care and they needed the retirement benefits. Are there different conflicts when managers and salespeople are of a different generation with different values? If so, what's the best way to overcome this barrier? Sure, there could be conflicts. I think there's a technology conflict out there. I think there is a conflict with some sales managers that may be more rigid, that are used to doing everything on their own, and we have an entire generation Y, or the millennials, and even some of the X's that grew up in a collaboration environment. They've been on social and digital their whole life. They've never, it's the mindset is more working together and collaborating, where old school is you're on your own. You figure it out yourself. And I've seen a lot of articles there talking about this and hitting this particular issue. What can the sales manager do? Well, if the sales manager needs training, the salespeople have to understand the sales manager's perspective. They can't have their own perspective. We're starting to see a little bit of the other thing too, where the firms are promoting the millennials as managers, yet there's someone out there who's been in the field for 15 or 20 years that didn't want to learn all the new technology. And that's even a bigger conflict. My perception is that younger people are more motivated by money. In general, younger people are motivated by money. Considering they haven't been accumulating annual financial compensation compared to older employees. Yes. In general, younger people like the novelty of money because they've never had the money before. But it isn't the only thing. I would assume that both older and younger people are motivated just by much as money. To a certain degree, but it's not just money. Very, very young people, it can be just money. People with 3, 4, 5, 6 years work experience, it's more than just money. And I don't have any industry specifics for you here. I apologize for that. Why would recognition be preferred as compensation compared to a monetary one? Because the money's not novel anymore. You already have a savings. You already have a certain level of lifestyle. You're not going to go out and buy a Ferrari anytime soon. So it's not just money. This goes back to our chapter 6 where we were talking about extrinsic and intrinsic, and I gave you that reference to Daniel Pink's book Drive. There are lots of intrinsic, non-monetary ways to compensate or reward an employee. We have here vacation. Vacation is still a monetary extrinsic reward. It still is. Some people want the vacation, some people want the monetary bonus, some people want the ability to be recognized and promoted. We have a couple questions. We're going to talk more on this. Give me 2 more questions down. Do managerial styles change from a B2C business to a B2B business? Yes. B2B selling is significantly more complicated than B2C selling. Where B2B selling, the person you are selling to is just one of many people you have to sell to. Because the actual user of the product is probably not the decision maker. And the decision maker doesn't have the authority to cut the check. In B2C, the person you are talking to is the decision maker, the buyer, and the user in almost all cases. This is substantially needs much more sales management. Usually the salespeople have more autonomy than here. These salespeople are more experienced than here. The sales manager has to be more on top of these people compared to these people. Are there any successful companies that avoid rewards for salespeople? There are firms out there that are straight salary. And I'm going to say this off the top of my head, and we have to verify it. But Zappos is one of those companies that pays really well, and I don't think they do any bonuses or commissions or anything like that, other than maybe stock options or your ability to buy stock. There are lots of firms out there that is salary. Stu Leonard's actually up in New York, Southern Connecticut. They pay really well. There's no commissions. I probably can put Wegmans in there. You pay really well. There isn't explicit bonus or commissions. Okay, let's get to some specifics here. Why in the maintenance stage do the authors think the opportunity and desire for promotion diminish? I disagree and believe it depends upon the person and their situation. Is this just a generalized perception? So let's go through these real quick. Exploration, you're a rookie. Establishment, okay, you're doing really, really well, and you probably have seen some promotions here and there. From sales account representative to a key account representative to a regional representative. Now we have maintenance. These are probably very, very good salespeople that like their position, don't want to change all that much. They're relatively high status, and they have a relatively high need for achievement. And these are the people that are drifting. So let's take a look at, I apologize for the blurriness, that's not your eyes. So this is the question. Why here are we promoted to management versus during the maintenance stage possibly promoting to management? There's a spot right here where we have a high riser and we have no question. We want to make sure that they do not leave and we get their expertise and their skills and knowledge, and we promote them to management so that these high rising stars here start training these newbies over here. Now, it could be the case, and there are people out there, and there are people that you work with that are in a position that they're comfortable and they don't want to necessarily do anything new. That's kind of what we're talking about here. If you were really good and you didn't want to get promoted to management, you end up here. Now, some of these people are really good, and we keep them because they are really good. Sometimes they're too comfortable. Sometimes they're not. I'm going to get to this in a second. Let me tell a quick story. My neighbor across the street over here is one of the top 200 salespeople at Nike. As a matter of fact, he was in Bentonville, Oregon. It's Bentonville, Oregon, where their corporate headquarters was for a week last week. Every 3 months, the entire top sales force goes. There are people that have been with Nike for a very, very long time that are not here, that are here, that have very, very key accounts, and they do not want to change. They don't want to change. They do not. They do not want to start using the new technologies. And it would be disingenuous for Nike to just fire these individuals because they've had such incredible value to the firm, throughout the last 15, 20 years. They have the key relationships with some of Nike's biggest customers, which they don't want that to get messed up. So I don't want to use the word coasting, but they're in this maintenance stage here. The problem is when we get to plateauing, where we have disengagement. Sometimes it's a lack of a clear career path. Sometimes they're just bored. Sometimes they don't want to be managed. It could be the case that you need a way to figure out and engage these individuals. Maybe they are a senior person and it's time to move them into a sales training role where they get to go back and become a teacher, a mentor, a pedagogue to these individuals, and they relive this part of their career, and it energizes them. And they still provide some value back to the firm, and you can get them out of this disengagement stage, and you can move them towards this maintenance stage. Maintenance is not necessarily a bad thing. It sounds like it's a bad thing. It's really a problem when they're in disengagement. Okay, let's finish up here. Maintenance stage, got that? Do you think the ages for the stages might increase with life changes in life and expectancy? Yeah. We see people holding on to their job longer. They stay in the workforce longer. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. Being out on the road and being an external sales rep, this is for the young. When I say young, I am saying up through 50s and early 50s. But we get to a point where you don't want to be traveling that much. You don't want that much of your income always being related to bonus and merit pay, that kind of, That's why we move into sales management. That's why we move into marketing. That's why we move into management in other parts of the firm. Because sales is very demanding. It's very demanding. And, you could do it for 15 or 20 years, or maybe 20 or 25 years, but you're not going to do it for 40 years. Can you explain the quote from the text? As a result of the war on terrorism and the events in the Middle East, salespeople have learned to adapt to a new selling environment. I've only been in the workforce after 9/11. Now, I would interpret this in two ways. One, the economy was doing somewhat well up until 9/11. We literally had, this was the back end of the Web 1.0 bubble. Things were going really well with the economy for a very long time through the mid to late 90s and into the early 2000s. There were signs that the bubble was going to burst. There were signs that the economy was going to retrench a little bit. But 9/11 put a monster damper in the global economy, both from a travel perspective, from a business perspective. We closed down. We, not only the U.S., but the entire world. there was less international travel. There was less trade. You can go and look back at that 2001, 2002 time period, and there was a monster dip in the economy globally. And salespeople had to adjust. They had a couple go-go years and, really strong years, and all of a sudden this unfortunate monster event happened, and it really impacted the entire world. Do you think there's a difference in motivation of Salesforce based on the size of the company? Yes, because when you have a larger firm, there are more ways that you can move people to positions, into marketing, into operations, into upper management, into sales management. If you're at a smaller firm and you have someone who's plateauing or is in maintenance stage, and there's only a couple of chairs in the room and you're playing musical chairs, there isn't that many places to sit. Larger firms have an internal training team. It's a great way to move people that are very experienced, that might be plateauing a little bit, and you give them a job as a sales trainer where their salary is guaranteed 100%, and they have the knowledge and experience to really train the youngins, the Padawans. Okay, very good. Thank you for your time. I'll start working on Chapter 8.